In this lesson, we're going to look at the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics. How does microeconomics differ from macroeconomics? We'll start with microeconomics, and that's the study of choices or decision-making among firms, households, and individuals. So when a household or an individual chooses to buy a home, what we want to know is, what choice did they make? What type of home did they buy? Where did they buy that home? Was it a large home, a small home? What price did they pay? What type of mortgage, if any, did they choose to purchase that home? What was the interest rate on that mortgage? What was their down payment? Those are the types of questions we're asking. Also, why did they make the choice to buy the home? And how are they being influenced to purchase a home? How can they be influenced to change their decision? So maybe they didn't choose to buy a home, but maybe the government wants to encourage home ownership. So how can individuals and households be influenced to purchase a home? So for example, maybe with a tax credit for purchasing a home. That's something that policymakers would be interested in if they're trying to encourage home ownership. These same types of questions apply when we're thinking about decisions that firms are making. So if a firm is deciding to purchase equipment, did they purchase the equipment or not, right? So what choice did they make? Why did they make those choices? Did they choose high quality equipment or lower quality equipment? How did they finance that equipment if they financed it? What influenced them to purchase the equipment, and how can they be influenced to change their decisions? So maybe instead the firm decided not to purchase new equipment, but if the government wants to encourage investment in equipment or research and development and things like that, they may introduce policies to incentivize firms to do so. So again, generally with tax breaks and things like that. So while with microeconomics, we're looking at the decision-making for individuals, households, and firms, with macroeconomics, we're studying the whole economy. So here we're looking at things like unemployment, we're looking at things like inflation, we're looking at things like GDP or gross domestic product, as well as GNP, gross national product, and we're looking for economic growth. So we're looking at policies that potentially reduce unemployment and reduce inflation while increasing production and economic growth. Now, one way to remember the difference between the two is to look at the word itself. So microeconomics has the prefix micro, which means small, so again, individuals, households, firms, while macroeconomics has the prefix macro, which means the larger. So we're looking at the larger picture, the whole economy, whole countries, comparing countries with one another. So that's a way to kind of remember the difference. Micro means small, macro means large. List examples of microeconomic issues. So one issue is, how do firms decide the price of their goods and services? They're making a decision about what price to apply, and they're going to get information from customers as they either decide to purchase at this price or decide not to purchase at this price. Another issue is, how do consumers react to a change in price of a good or service? So do they react by not purchasing that good or service at all, purchasing a little less, or do they continue to purchase the same amount? Chances are it depends on the type of good or service it is. Another issue is, which government policy would be most efficient at decreasing drug use? We know that drug use has negative secondary consequences, so there are government offices tasked with answering this question, and then seeing how it can be best implemented at local levels. Which government policies and procedures are most effective at keeping the food supply safe? So again, this would most concern policies and procedures at the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. So what are these policies that are incentivizing firms involved in food production to keep that food supply safe? So all of these are microeconomic issues because they're concerned with what individuals and households and firms would be doing, the choices and decisions that they're making, as well as what's influencing those choices and decisions, and what are the secondary or unintended consequences from those decisions. List some examples of macroeconomic issues. One is, which policies promote economic growth? That's a really important question because when we identify these policies or institutions, we can then apply them to developing countries that may be having a hard time with economic growth. Another issue is inflation. So what is it that causes inflation, And what are some policies that can keep inflation low? A related issue is the secondary consequences that come from inflation. Another issue is which policies decrease unemployment, and do they have any secondary effects? If so, what are those secondary effects? What are those unintended consequences that come with these policies? Does government intervention ease economic recessions? So whenever we see economic recessions, we do see the government intervening. So whether it's Congress, whether it's the president, whether it's the Federal Reserve, the public demands actions of these institutions. And so what are they doing, and are these things actually easing economic recessions? These are all macroeconomic issues because they concern the economy as a whole, and these are all things that you would touch on in a macroeconomics course.